In the summer of 1997, a young couple arrived for a quiet vacation at a beach rental in the Outer Banks, North Carolina. It was supposed to be a short getaway: golden sun, white sand, and the sound of waves rolling ashore. But after just one night, they vanished without a trace. Their belongings were still in the bedroom. The rental car was parked outside. The shower in the bathroom was left running, as if someone had stepped out in a hurry and never returned. For 27 years, the disappearance remained a chilling mystery: no answers, no clues to follow. Until 2024, when the house was finally torn down, and behind its damp, crumbling walls, a dark secret was uncovered at last. They were not the kind of couple anyone would expect to simply vanish. Michael Turner was 32, steady and thoughtful, the type of man who planned everything down to the smallest detail. His wife, Lisa, was 29, full of warmth, the kind of person who could make strangers feel like friends within minutes. They lived in Virginia, far enough from the coast that a trip to the beach felt like an escape, but close enough that it wasn't unusual for them to take short vacations by the sea. That summer of 1997, they had chosen the Outer Banks, a long, narrow chain of barrier islands stretching along the North Carolina coast. It was a place both remote and lively at the same time. Miles of windswept dunes and empty beaches, dotted with small towns that came alive only during tourist season. The house they rented was nothing extravagant, just a 2-story beach rental with weather-worn shutters and a wraparound porch that faced the ocean. To Michael and Lisa, it was perfect, simple, private, and far from the noise of city life. Neighbors who saw them that first day described them as happy, relaxed, carrying bags of groceries into the house, laughing about the seagulls swooping overhead. Later that evening, Lisa was spotted walking barefoot along the shoreline, her dress blowing in the salty wind, while Michael trailed behind with a camera, snapping photos of the fading sunset. Nothing seemed out of place. They blended into the rhythm of the town, just another couple on vacation. The Outer Banks in the late 1992 was quieter than it is today. There were fewer tourists, fewer lights at night, and long stretches of beach where one could walk for hours without meeting another soul. The isolation was part of its charm and also part of its danger. Storms could roll in without warning. Roads could be swallowed by sand. And the ocean itself, beautiful in daylight, turned black and endless under the stars. Locals often spoke of the islands as if they were alive, shifting with the tides, hiding things in the dunes, erasing footprints with every wave. There were stories, of course, whispered in diners, and passed along in fishing shacks, shipwrecks swallowed by the sea, campers who wandered off and never returned. But to visitors like Michael and Lisa, those tales were just background noise, half-forgotten legends that gave the place its mystery. Inside the beach house, everything was ordinary. A suitcase unpacked on the bed, a half-finished crossword puzzle on the table, a pair of sandals left by the door, as if their owners had only stepped outside for a moment. Nothing suggested tragedy. Nothing hinted at what was about to happen. But looking back now, after everything that would come to light nearly 3 decades later, it's hard not to wonder, was there already something watching them that night? Was there already a shadow lingering at the edge of that quiet beach, waiting for the right moment to strike? The last confirmed sighting of Michael and Lisa came on the evening of the 19th of July, 1997. It was a Saturday, warm but breezy, with the kind of golden twilight that lingered along the water. A neighbor, an elderly woman who often sat on her porch in the evenings, remembered seeing the couple walking back from the beach just before nightfall. Lisa carried her sandals in her hand, and Michael had his arm around her shoulder. They looked content, she later said, like people who had no reason to be afraid. Sometime after that, the details grow uncertain. A receipt later found in the kitchen showed they had bought groceries from a local market earlier that afternoon. Fruit, bread, bottled water, and a bottle of wine. On the counter inside the house, investigators later discovered the wine had been opened, 2 glasses set out beside it. The cork lay on the floor, as though someone had dropped it in a hurry. Dinner had been prepared but never eaten, The plates were left empty on the table. Around 9:30 p.m., a different neighbor thought she heard voices raised, not in anger, but in some kind of alarm. She described it as a sound carried by the wind. Hurried footsteps, a door slamming, then silence. She didn't think much of it at the time. In a rental neighborhood by the beach, people came and went at odd hours. Doors banged, kids laughed, strangers argued. But looking back, she wonders if that sound was the last trace of Michael and Lisa alive. By the next morning, the house seemed frozen in time. The bed had been turned down, sheets pulled back, as if they had been about to sleep there. Lisa's hairbrush was on the dresser, strands of her long brown hair still caught in its bristles. Michael's wallet was on the nightstand. Their rental car sat parked outside, keys on the kitchen counter. Even the shower was found slightly running, a thin stream of water trickling into the drain, as though someone had stepped out mid-rinse and never returned. Searchers would later describe the scene as unsettling, almost staged. Every sign of a normal night was there, yet the two people at the center of it had simply disappeared. No forced entry. No signs of struggle, just absence. Authorities were called by the rental agency when the couple failed to check out the following week. At first, police assumed they had gone for a walk and perhaps drowned in the strong coastal currents. The Outer Banks was notorious for its unpredictable riptides. But when divers searched the waters and found nothing, attention shifted back to the house. The back door showed faint smudges, fingerprints too blurred to identify. A single sandal, believed to be Lisa's, was discovered half buried in the sand near the dunes, though investigators could not prove when it had been left there. Strangest of all were the footprints on the beach, found by a patrol officer on the morning of the 20th of July. Two sets led from the rental house down toward the shoreline. They walked side by side for several yards, until one set abruptly stopped, erased in the sand as though swallowed by the sea. But the other set the heavier prints. Likely Michael's continued further, then scattered, turning erratic, before vanishing altogether. No one could explain it. No one could say where the couple went after those final steps. The town buzzed with rumors almost immediately. Some whispered they had been taken by strangers passing through. Drifters who knew the isolation of the beach at night made it the perfect hunting ground. Others believed it was something darker, something that belonged not to the world of man, but to the shifting, treacherous islands themselves. The sea, after all, had claimed many before them. Whatever happened on that warm July night, it left behind nothing but questions. 2 glasses of wine untouched, a shower left running, and a silence that seemed to grow heavier with every year that followed. When Michael and Lisa failed to check out of their rental house on the 26th of July, 1997, the property manager knocked on the door, expecting to find them packing. Instead, he walked into silence. Their belongings were scattered exactly as they had been left a week earlier, the air stale, the faint smell of salt and mildew already clinging to the curtains. He called the police immediately. By that afternoon, deputies from Dare County Sheriff's Office arrived and began what would become one of the strangest missing person cases the Outer Banks had ever seen. At first, their approach was routine: secure the house, list the belongings, interview neighbors. But the deeper they looked, the stranger the story became. The couple's wallets, Idaho S, and cash were untouched inside the house. Lisa's jewelry box sat open on the dresser, nothing missing. Michael's watch was on the nightstand. Even their beach towels were still folded by the back door. There was no sign of robbery, no forced entry, no struggle. It was as if they had simply stepped outside for a moment and never returned. Search teams were quickly assembled. Officers combed the beach, following the tide lines for any trace of bodies washed ashore. Helicopters scanned the dunes, while divers searched the waters offshore, braving the dangerous rip currents the area was known for. For days, they found nothing. No clothes, no shoes, not even a fragment of the couple's belongings carried out to sea. The investigation shifted inland. Deputies canvassed every motel, diner, and gas station within 50 miles. They showed Michael and Lisa's photographs to clerks and waitresses, to fishermen mending their nets, to truck drivers stopping for coffee. Some swore they recognized the couple. but none of the sightings could be confirmed. Within a week, FBI agents were quietly brought in. A young married couple vanishing without a trace suggested more than just an accident. Agents searched their backgrounds, their phone records, their bank accounts. Nothing suspicious appeared. No debts, no secret affairs, no criminal ties. By all accounts, they were ordinary, well-liked people. That, in some ways, made the case more disturbing. Attention turned back to the house itself. Forensic teams dusted for fingerprints, but apart from the couple's own and the blurred smudges on the back door, there was little to find. Soil samples from the yard showed nothing unusual. Dogs brought in to track scents lost the trail at the dunes, where the sand shifted daily, erasing all memory of the night. Rumors spread through the town like wildfire. Some believed the couple had staged their disappearance, slipping away to start a new life. Others whispered about a prowler who had been seen near the rentals that summer, a man no one seemed able to identify. Still others returned to old island legends about spirits on the shore, about the graveyard of the Atlantic claiming more souls. Weeks turned into months, and then into years. The case grew colder with each season. Files were boxed up and stored away. Detectives moved on, retired, or died, leaving behind a mystery no one could explain. But the beach house stood, weather-beaten and silent, as if keeping its own secrets. And behind its walls, in places no one thought to look, something dark was waiting to be found. Time has a way of burying even the deepest mysteries. By the mid-2002, the disappearance of Michael and Lisa Turner was little more than a cold case file in the sheriff's archives, pulled out occasionally by new detectives, hoping for a breakthrough that never came. Locals still whispered about it, especially when the rental house changed owners. But for most, the memory faded into the fabric of the Outer Banks, just another unsolved story carried away by the tide. But 27 years later, in the spring of 2024, that quiet, weather-beaten house by the shore was scheduled for demolition. The new owners wanted to build something modern in its place: bigger windows, open decks, the kind of rental property tourists now demanded. By then, the house had stood nearly empty for years. Its paint peeling, its shutters banging in the wind. Workers arrived with heavy machinery, prepared to tear it down to the foundation. On the second day of demolition, as crews began breaking into the basement, crawl space, a low, damp area rarely used, they noticed something odd. Behind one of the walls, the soil seemed disturbed, packed differently than the rest. A young worker's shovel struck something hard. At first, they thought it was driftwood, washed in by flooding. But when the dirt crumbled away, the outline of a bone emerged. Work stopped immediately. The sheriff's department was called, and soon forensic teams arrived, cordoning off the property. Within hours, they confirmed the unthinkable: the remains of two individuals buried side by side beneath the foundation of the house. The news spread across the Outer Banks like wildfire. Reporters gathered, neighbors watched from the street, and people who had long since moved away called back to ask, could it really be them? Forensic analysis moved slowly but deliberately. The skeletons were fragile, weathered by nearly 3 decades underground. Alongside them, investigators found fragments of clothing, what appeared to be the remains of a cotton summer dress, and a metal watch that still, faintly, bore the inscription, "To Michael. With love, Lisa." DNA testing confirmed what many had already feared. After 27 years, Michael and Lisa Turner had been found. But the discovery only deepened the mystery. These were not the bodies of two people swept out to sea. They had not vanished into the dunes or been claimed by the currents. They had been buried deliberately, hidden beneath the very house they had rented for their vacation. How had no one noticed? How had police missed it during their initial investigation? The crawl space had been inspected in 1997, but only briefly. The ground then showed no sign of disturbance. Whoever buried them must have done so quickly, efficiently, and with the knowledge that no one would look too closely. The positioning of the remains told a grim story. Michael's bones showed fractures, consistent with blunt force trauma to the skull. Lisa's showed signs of strangulation. Both deaths, forensic experts concluded, were homicides. The discovery shook the town to its core. For nearly 3 decades, residents had lived alongside the unanswered question of what happened to the Turners. Now they knew, but the answer was darker than anyone imagined. Detectives reopened the case, this time with a new generation of investigators armed with modern technology. They began retracing every step of that week in 1997. Who had keys to the rental? Who had access to the house after the police first searched it? Who stood to gain from hiding their bodies so close to where the search had begun? The beach house had kept its secret for 27 years. But now, with its walls torn down and its foundation laid bare, the truth was finally clawing its way back into the light. And with it came a chilling realization. Someone had lived with this knowledge all along. Someone who had walked past that house, perhaps even slept inside it, while 2 graves lay hidden just a few feet below. The discovery of the Turners' remains in 2024 reopened more than just a cold case. It reopened wounds, suspicions, and long-forgotten whispers that had lingered in the town for nearly 3 decades. Detectives who were children when the couple first vanished now stood at the center of a homicide investigation that stretched across time, piecing together fragments of a puzzle almost lost to history. The first step was revisiting every name connected to the case in 1997. Rental records, property managers, maintenance workers, and neighbors were all scrutinized. Some had passed away. Others had moved far from the Outer Banks. But one name surfaced repeatedly in the dusty reports: the owner of the rental property at the time, a man named Charles Whitaker. Whitaker had been a local businessman, known for owning several beach houses he rented out during tourist season. On the surface, he had seemed cooperative during the initial investigation. He told police he had been out of town the week of the disappearance. He provided receipts showing he was in Virginia. Nothing linked him directly to the missing couple, at least, not in 1997. But in 2024, the lens of suspicion shifted sharply. Investigators dug deeper into Whitaker's past. They discovered a history of disputes with renters, accusations of inappropriate behavior, and even a quiet settlement paid to a young woman in 1995 who had claimed Whitaker harassed her during her stay at one of his properties. None of it had led to criminal charges, but the pattern was there, unsettling, undeniable. Forensic experts confirmed that the Turners had not been buried immediately the night they vanished. Soil analysis suggested the bodies were moved and concealed days later. That meant someone had access to the house even after the initial police search, someone with both opportunity and familiarity with the property's structure. All trails pointed back to Whitaker. By the summer of 2024, Whitaker was 74 years old, living quietly in South Carolina. Detectives arrived at his home with a warrant. Inside, they found old photographs, ledgers, and most disturbingly, a small box containing personal items belonging to former renters: watches, bracelets, keys. Among them was a gold locket engraved with the initials LT. Faced with mounting evidence, Whitaker denied everything. He claimed the items were forgotten belongings left behind by renters over the years, but investigators weren't convinced. When they confronted him with DNA traces recovered from the locket, which matched Lisa Turner, his composure cracked. The prosecution's theory was grim. They believed Whitaker had confronted the couple the night of the 19th of July, possibly over a dispute, possibly driven by something darker, an obsession with Lisa. Michael had likely intervened, leading to violence. In the aftermath, Whitaker killed them both. He knew the house better than anyone. He knew the crawl space would not be examined closely. And when the initial search turned up nothing, he returned days later to bury the evidence beneath the very foundation. For 27 years, the truth lay hidden under layers of earth and silence. Whitaker rented out the house, season after season, while his secret remained undisturbed below. Families stayed there. Children played on its floors. Vacationers laughed on its porch, all while 2 graves lay buried beneath their feet. In late 2024, Whitaker was formally charged with 2 counts of murder, but justice, after so much time, felt complicated. He was an old man, frail and failing. A trial could drag on for years, and some feared he might not live long enough to face a verdict. Still, for the families of Michael and Lisa, there was finally a name, a face, and an answer to the question that had haunted them for nearly 3 decades. Yet even with the truth revealed, unease lingered. How many others had disappeared quietly along those windswept shores? How many stories, dismissed as accidents or chance, masked something more sinister? The case of Michael and Lisa Turner was no longer a mystery. It was a crime, planned, executed, and buried in plain sight. And though the sands of the Outer Banks had tried to cover it, the past had clawed its way back, demanding to be heard. When the news broke that Michael and Lisa Turner's remains had finally been found, the Outer Banks fell silent in a way that words cannot fully describe. For nearly 3 decades, their names had floated like ghosts through conversations, sometimes with sadness, sometimes as a cautionary tale, sometimes as little more than a campfire story for tourists who came to the shore in search of mystery. But now, the reality was darker, heavier. They had not vanished into the sea. They had not run away to start a new life. They had been murdered, hidden in the very place where they had once laughed, unpacked their bags, and dreamed of a peaceful summer week together. For their families, there was grief, but also a strange kind of relief. Michael's sister, now in her 60s, told reporters that she had prayed for an answer, any answer, for years. "We can finally bring them home," she said quietly, clutching an old photograph of the smiling couple. Lisa's parents, both elderly, had long since passed away, without ever knowing the truth. But nieces and nephews who had grown up hearing fragments of the story now understood the full weight of what had happened. Closure, if it could be called that, had finally come. In the town itself, the discovery left scars. People remembered Charles Whitaker not as a stranger, but as a man they had passed on the street, a man who had eaten at the same diners, attended the same community events. To think that he may have kept such a secret for decades was deeply unsettling. If he had buried the Turners beneath his own property, what else might he have done? What other shadows lingered, never uncovered? The house where the murders occurred no longer stands. It was torn down completely in the months after the discovery, leaving only an empty lot facing the restless ocean. For some, that was a relief. The structure had become too stained with memory to remain. For others, the emptiness felt worse, as though erasing the house erased the tangible reminder of what had happened. But the ocean remembers, the dunes remember, and in the shifting sands of the Outer Banks, people still pause when they pass that vacant stretch of land, their thoughts heavy with what was unearthed there. The case is technically resolved. There is a name attached, a man indicted, a theory of how it happened, yet mysteries remain. Why did Whitaker do it? Was it truly a crime of obsession and impulse, or was there something more, something darker, more calculated, that no one ever uncovered? The silence of the dead cannot answer. And so the story lingers, as stories like this always do. It lingers in the salt air, in the voices of locals who lower their tones when they speak of that summer of 1997, and in the minds of those who wonder how long a secret can stay buried before the earth itself decides to give it back. Perhaps the most unsettling thought of all is not what happened to Michael and Lisa Turner, but what their case suggests about other stories, other names lost to time, other disappearances brushed aside as accidents or mysteries of the sea. How many of those, too, hide a truth waiting to be uncovered? On the surface, the Outer Banks looks like paradise. Endless beaches, crashing waves, the promise of escape. But just beneath that beauty lies something else. A reminder that even the most peaceful places can hold the darkest secrets, and sometimes those secrets refuse to stay hidden forever. If stories like this leave you wondering, you are not alone. What happened to Michael and Lisa is not just a mystery from the past. It's a reminder of how fragile and fleeting our presence can be. Do you believe justice has truly been served after all these years? Or do you think some secrets remain hidden, even now? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, and your perspective might reveal something others have missed. And if you want to hear more stories of disappearances, hidden truths, and the shadows that linger long after the world has moved on, don't forget to subscribe and stay with me. There are many more stories waiting. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried.